Today's video is another album ranking from a band that had most of their successes in the late 80s, early 90s, and that band is Kingdom Come. This has been a real labour of love for me because these are one of my favourite bands within the hard rock arena. But what's their best album? Keep on watching to find out. Welcome back to Rocker's Beer Review. As I said in the intro, today we're going to be doing the ranking albums of the German US band Kingdom Come. Now, Kingdom Come were out basically in the late 80s. They were formed in 1987, actually in Germany, in Lenny Wolf's hometown of Hanover. And for me, obviously, for a lot of people, they're probably well known for the first couple of albums. And they had a very bad reputation of being very much a Led Zeppelin clone band. In fact, even when they released that first song, Get It On, from that first album, there was a lot of people that had thought, and the record company didn't make too much of a thing about it, that this was a reunited Led Zeppelin with all their sort of 80s shine. But in fact, it was Kingdom Come. And I think, to be honest, even though they had this tag, it only really, they were more Led Zepp clones on that first album, especially so. But that doesn't stop the fact that the songs were brilliant and they were a really great band. So when they started those first two albums, they basically were, it was almost like Kingdom Come were formed out of the ashes of another band called Stone Fury. They were a bit more of an 80s sort of rocking band, mid-80s pop rock sort of band. When that sort of finished, Stone Fury turned into Kingdom Come. So we had Lenny Wolf as lead singer, and he pretty much throughout the recording time was the lead singer throughout and the sort of mainstay of the band and the real sort of leader. But with him on those first couple of albums, we had the Italian-born bass player Johnny B. Frank, American musicians on lead guitar we had Danny Stagg, and on rhythm guitar we had Rick Steyer, and then on drums James Kotak, who later actually played with the Scorpions. So this was their key sort of lineup. They had, after their first couple of albums, had lots of changes to the lineup. A lot of the time Lenny Wolf would basically direct the whole sort of project himself and play multiple instruments as well as sing, and bring on guests and other sort of band members as well. So let's start with this ranking then. So out of all their studio albums, there are 13 studio albums. It's quite a lot, and I think there'll be a lot of people out there that may have heard of Kingdom Come, may have heard of songs like Get It On and Living Out of Touch and songs like that had big heavy rotation, you know, in that late 80s and on MTV. But they didn't realise that 13 albums, and they were still releasing albums well into the 21st century. So we're starting with number 13. And number 13 is, I wasn't sure whether to actually include it, but I thought, why not? It's called Rendered Waters. It came out in 2011. This is basically a redone versions of some of their sort of classic tracks. But I'm putting it in 13th because these redone versions aren't really a patch on the original. One, the whole sound and production isn't as good, but they just sound a little bit sort of a bit dirtier than the actual nice shine of some of those sort of early songs. There was a few new songs on this album, Rendered Waters, but they're just a bit okay. And if you really want to hear the songs on this album in their best form, go to the original albums they appear on. The drum sound on this is especially sort of not that great. So that's number 13, Rendered Waters. In 12th position is the album Outlier. Now, again, another fairly modern one. The opener, God Does Not Sing Our Song, is a really brilliant, heavy, catchy sort of song. But the album sort of goes downhill, and it's all a little bit bland from there. And it's only redeemed by the last song, When the Colours Break the Grey, which is a really great song as well. So I'm putting Outlier in 12th position. In 11th position is Magnified. Again, another recent album. When I Was and Sweet Killing, they're the sort of standout tracks. And the final song, I think, is a really good song as well, Feeding the Flame. But again, like the previous Outlier, all the songs in the middle sort of merge into one a little bit, and then nothing really stands out. So I'm putting Magnified in 11th. In 10th position is Ain't Crying for the Moon. Now, there's a lot of sort of I don't know, quite high processed sort of sound effects on Lenny's voice. I mean, Lenny has got an amazing singing voice, and he certainly does a lot of different production techniques in terms of so his voice sounds different in certain ways on all the albums. But Ain't Crying for the Moon has got a lot more of this. Now, the title track itself is an absolute beast. It's one of the best songs by Kingdom Come. It's about 8 minutes long, and you think, oh, this is a bit strange. It starts off as a sort of slow ballad for about 4 minutes of it, and you think, oh, is this it, really? But then at that halfway mark, it really sort of gets heavy and becomes a real epic track. It's an absolutely excellent track. Other highlights on this album are the songs Perfect Citizen, but apart from the Beatles cover, which is Across the Universe, and the redone version of Get It On, the rest of the album doesn't really have as many standout songs. But I'm putting Ain't Crying for the Moon at number 10. In ninth position is Perpetual. It's a more sort of consistent album. It's got a great sound. The first 3 songs especially are all good, and they're the sort of songs that the more you listen to them, the better they get. I also like the more sort of atmospheric songs on this album, like Silhouette Paintings and Watch the Dragon Fly. They're really good. The rest of the songs, it can sound a little bit grungy. I mean, if you compare this sound to the sort of first couple of albums, there's a big difference. But the one thing that hasn't been different, I think on this album, Lenny sounds a lot more like Robert Plant than he has done for a number of years. But it's a good album. So number 9, Perpetual. In 8th position is Master 7. The slow, brooding, sort of Gonna Lose Her and More Restrictions are great songs. But again, a rest of them is picking out the sort of good songs in there. I think that the ballad Can't Fake Affection is good. It's got a lot. It's a bit different. It's got lots of Spanish guitar on it, and some really great melodic solos. And then the really rocky sort of Get Up My Friend's a good song. It's not a bad. It's a little bit patchy, Master 7, but I'm putting it in 8th position. In 7th position is the album 2. Now, if you go on Spotify, this is actually listed under Lenny Wolf as a solo artist, but it does say Lenny Wolf's Kingdom Come on the album cover. So I still think it's a Kingdom Come album, so I'm including it here. And wherever it is, I still really like this album. I think a lot of people don't give it the time, but I think the sound quality is up there with some of their best albums. There are quite a few more of the slower melodic songs, and there's a few redone versions of some Stone Fury tracks on his first band. But the key tracks on it are It Ain't So Bad, Waiting, the Stone Fury song Too Late, and Joe English as well is another good song. I think it's a really good album, and it's got a good sound to it. The production's very good, some really nice solos on it as well. So I'm putting 2 in 7th position. In 6th position is Independent. Now, for me, the standout track on here is Forever. It's a really great ballad, but there's also some real meatier, heavier sort of intense sound compared to a lot of the other albums as well. Certainly the earlier ones. So you've got Didn't Understand. It's got a great heavy sort of sort of riff into it. Mother, America, Do You Dare, Easy Talking Hardline is a really great song. Again, with a really great big meaty sound. But I think it's a good album. It's a little bit more consistent than some of the ones that are behind it, really. So I'm putting Independent in 6th position. In 5th position, and this is probably the album that most people probably thought was their last album, this is Hands of Time. It's their 3rd album. Although the songs are pretty good, the whole sound is a little soft, especially from their later stuff, and also the sort of first 2. There's a lot more sort of overproduction on this, a little bit. It's a lot more use of keyboards, and you sort of miss some of the twin lead sort of and the twin guitars of those first 2 albums. But there are some good songs on it. Should I, Shot Down, Can't Deny. It's still a pretty good album, and it, and a lot of people may feel that after this is where they really dropped off, and they probably did commercially wise. They probably did, but Hands of Time I'm putting in 5th position. In 4th position is the Twilight Cruiser. Again, more crunchier sound from this album was was their 5th album. A more crunchier sound, but some really great songs. The title track itself is probably one of my favourite Kingdom Come songs. But Rather Be On My Own, Always On The Run are also really good tracks. It's a much more consistent album. There's a lot of really good songs on here, and I think that's why I put it in 4th position. But check out this title track, Twilight Cruiser, because it's excellent. In 3rd position is their album Bad Image. Now, this was the album that followed Hands of Time. And to me, the songs are just absolutely spot on. They're almost as good as those first 2 albums in terms of the songwriting. And there's a real sort of, even though this came out in '94, sort of, right at the height of sort of the grunge period, but it's got a real sort of 80s sheen on it. That yes, there's keyboards on it, and there are quite a lot of keyboards, but the whole sort of production of guitar, the guitar stands out. The keyboards really work to create atmosphere on the album songs, and the songs, as I said, are brilliant. Passion Departed, You're the One, Fake Believer, Friends, really great song. I think this is one of those albums that a lot of people would probably have never heard of, but you should really get it because it's my top 3 Kingdom Come album, and it's brilliant album. So Bad Image, if you like good hard rock songs, then check it out. Now, the top 2 are probably not going to be much different than most people that know Kingdom Come. So in 2nd position has to be their 2nd album, In Your Face. Yes, it's a little bit less, it's more sort of hard rock than sort of the sort of bluesy rock of their debut, basically. But there's some brilliant songs. I mean, Do You Like It? What an anthem. That is a brilliant song. Never get tired of hearing that. Perfect O. Stargazer, Mean Dirty Joe. There's some really good songs on it. I mean, there isn't much weak stuff on this album, but it's just not quite as good as their first album. So In Your Face makes number 2. And the 1st place Kingdom Come album, the best Kingdom Come album, and I don't think there'll be many people that disagree with me that know Kingdom Come, and that's their debut, the self-titled debut, titled simply Kingdom Come. Now, this is one of those, and I've said it on many ranking videos, all killer and no filler. There's every single song on here is great. There's not really a weak song. Living Out of Touch, Get It On, Pushing Hard, Now Forever After. The ballad What Love Can Be is an absolutely amazing with a brilliant solo. The Shuffle. I mean, these are chock full of really good songs. It came out right at the sort of end of that sort of hair metal, hard rock sort of period. They were on bigger tours. They toured with the Scorpions. They were on the US Monsters of Rock in the end of the 80s. So it was a big time for them. And this album, although people say, oh, it sounds like Led Zeppelin, it still sounds less like Led Zeppelin than someone like Greta Van Fleet does. So, I think that they will give it a very sort of a hard time about that. And you can't, if you're going to be compared with a band, then why not be compared with probably one of the best hard rock bands of all time? So I think Kingdom Come need more love, and I think I wanted to do this because I think, well, I don't know how many people still like Kingdom Come, but I love them. I still listen to them quite a lot today. They're certainly one of my favourite bands. Certainly in hard rock, they're certainly one of my favourites. They're just a bit different, but it's driven by Lenny's brilliant vocal style. So let me know, are you a big fan of Kingdom Come? Did you think they'd only done a couple of albums? I mean, I don't think anyone who's ever is into rock music, and certainly hard rock, American, US hair metal sort of rock, would not have heard of Kingdom Come and not at least heard of those first albums. But let me know what your favourite track is and what your favourite album is. I mean, maybe there's some of those later albums you prefer than their sort of first couple. But for me, I don't think they can be better, those first 2 albums. Really good, really well-produced albums, great songwriting, and just brilliant performances by the band. So I hope you've enjoyed this ranking for Kingdom Come. Please let me know in the comments if you've ever heard of them, you like them, your favourite songs, your favourite albums. Unfortunately, Kingdom Come are I say they're not around anymore, but what happened is that Lenny decided he was going to sort of retire from the music industry, and he sort of drew a line under, his career. But, at that time, the original lineup, minus Lenny, wanted to get together, and they played live. They brought in a new vocalist, which is a bit weird because Lenny is such a integral part of the band. But they brought in a new singer, and they was basically touring, doing those first 2 albums. The whole, the same guitarist, Johnny B. Frank, Rick Steyer, Danny Stagg, and James Cossack. They're all in the band, but with this new guy, I think I can't remember his name. something St. John, I think his name is. But he's you know, he's not Lenny Wolf, but they're playing all those songs. So I don't know if they're playing Europe. If you're an American, you may have seen them, because I know they've done tours in the US. They played, I think they've done some of the Cruise to the Edge sort of tours as well. But let me know what you think. You know, have you seen it? I never saw Kingdom Come. I never got the chance to see them. So if you have seen them, let me know what you thought it was like, what the experience was. Can Lenny sing as well live as he does on those albums? Let me know in the comments. And until the next one, you know what you're going to do. Keep on rocking.